Hello world, Podler team back at it. We're doing some more track 2 voicing, where we go with various principles of Podler in themed sections. The theme section we're doing is about yourself. So an advanced section, but a very interesting one. So introductions, we'll get going. I am Naiji Coach. With me I have Naiji, Ben, and Glenn, and we're just continue on. They are building up their bardic beats for about themselves. Anyone in particular want to go first, or?
Well, actually, I have a little bit that I'm kind of working on it right now.
All
so
right.
I haven't really been able to get a whole bunch of work done because I've been focused on mainly just school stuff, right? And so I don't really have anything to provide as far as new stuff goes. So I'll probably just be working on that, like as far as like my Word document goes, and then I guess Ben can go first.
So Ben, we'll take you as far as you got new stuff. Then Glenn, if you have anything by that time, we'll go over that, and then we can see if anyone wants to kind of maybe break down a beat, and then we can call it for the day. Does that sound good?
Yeah, it sounds
Unless
good.
you got, we can go further, whatever your endurance is. I know, Ben, I forget, how difficult was that to do beats in the moment?
It wasn't actually that challenging, at least for me,
All right.
I mean, I actually found it kind of fun because it's, you get, it helps to brainstorm with others because they do know certain aspects about you. And also the conversation really helps give you ideas.
Okay. So. Well, then we'll do as many of those you feel up to doing then, Ben, and then Glenn, same for you. Okay. So Ben, take it away. What do you have for us?
But yeah, sure thing. So I have 4 beats. I did the whole programming section, which was 4 beats, and I did, let's see, I did the relationships beat, and then typology, or like relationship prospects. So just make sure I have that covered and answered. Oh, and I also did, yeah. So programming kind of includes, So those are the 6 beats I did. Yep.
Nice. Do you want to take them one time? Maybe we can talk a little bit in between each one.
Yeah, sure thing. Sounds good. So, all right. So the first beat is basically just about like the overall process for me. And then I'll give like a quick high level. The first beat is about the overall process for me. The second beat is the current projects I'm working on. The third beat is the inspiration or like the benefits that I get from programming. And then the fourth beat is the career prospects I have in the future. So programming has always come quite naturally for me. I have strong problem-solving abilities and a keen attention to detail that has made programming come quite naturally for me. So I kind of restated that. In fact, the programming itself is so easy for me that the vast majority of the time I'm not thinking about the language or the syntax I need to use, but rather the complex problems that I'm trying to solve. My spirits talk with me day and night about the various programming cases that I'm working on and the various paths that I can take to try and solve them, which helps tremendously with the work that I do and why I'm so good at it. Last year, shortly after, oh, sorry, did you want to talk about that beat? Or should
I was kind of getting a little myself, a little process of time after you finished saying it. Because I had some thoughts while you were doing it, but then, you kind of have a little after as well. Yeah, I thought it was strong. I like how you brought yourself in at the end there. That was good.
Yeah, I'm starting to, I feel like I'm getting better at finding ways to include the value added into the beat, or the reason why it's
right, that personal value added.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was strong. I like that. Yeah, in fact, you just do it. You made it the star. I was like, bam, at the end.
Yeah. That was actually, really easy to do because it's so current. Like in the past, like I talked about, why a certain event was meaningful to me. It's kind of like, oftentimes, other than like where I am now, it's hard to explain what it actually did for me, which I think is pretty significant and helps me, find the value added back then. But just because it's so far back, it's kind of hard to remember. But with this stuff, it's really current and it's fresh, so it feels really good and easy. So last year, shortly after completing my first introductory courses on programming, I began working on a collage training application called the Sample Surfer. I then erected a website that the Sample Surfer uses, providing collaging and database navigation without needing to download the app. These projects are basically my life right now and consume the vast majority of my time when there isn't other work that I need to do. I'm extremely passionate about building new tools that will benefit the cause.
Excellent.
All right. Programming
One
is...
thing I could
yeah.
possibly you could add there, you don't have to, is the cause. I think perhaps you alluded to it in that beat, but if you wanted to, you could just give one or even two descriptive words of what kind of cause it is.
Oh yeah, the heroic cause, or the, you know.
The humanitarian cause, the greater good, whatever word you feel, and that would say a lot about you.
Yeah, I think that'd be good. A higher hunt. I don't know. I could.
Yeah, whatever you feel, whatever feels good for you. But that will first of all make the quantity more descriptively real for the person who's hearing it, but also that's attached to you. That was your personal opinion or your description of, which says a lot about you.
Yeah, yeah. I think that sounds good. Let's see here.
Because you could have a strategic cause, you could have a patriotic cause, you could have a humanitarian cause, you could have a, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
All kinds of different cause, charity cause, and those one or two words are like, oh, got it. That may, because cause could be a lot of different things. That narrows down more specifically what it is, and the fact that that's the variety you do, that says a lot about you. That's the kind of cause you do.
Yeah, those descriptive adjectives really do add a lot. It gives the sentences a lot more personality, a lot more, I guess, meaning, flavor. Because I mean, they do have like more like general meanings, but it helps sort of like explain like what specifically, or what I guess what kind of flavor it is.
Yeah.
So
and myself as kind of like you know, I'm a fan of your heroic character. When you read that beat, I was like, oh, that's a cool beat. But as a fan, I was like, ooh, what kind of cause? Do you mean? And so I was naturally curious. So I think you added in there that would kind of maybe satiate a natural curiosity you might have on that point.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's a good improvement. Programming is fulfilling for me because it creates a bridge that makes it very easy to bring ideas all the way down the SS index very quickly. My spirits, especially my other, give me new insights and ideas constantly of where I can go next, which I get a lot of energy talking about my spirits and my fellow team members. I then champion the development of the ideas that seem worthy of my time and energy, testing and fixing any bugs and issues that come up along the way until the idea becomes a reality. As a result of the speed and energy of this process, I find programming to be incredibly valuable to my Naiji peak pathway.
Boom. Awesome.
Nice. So next beat. With the work that I've done on the Sample Surfer and the website and the energy and inspiration that programming gives me in general, I have developed a sense of destiny that this should be what I do for the rest of my life. I would like to be a software developer of some kind. I don't know what kind of developer I'd like to be, but currently I'm leaning towards specializing in higher level programming skill sets that work more with abstract libraries and less with the machine architecture. That is so far what I've found to be most inspiring and fulfilling when it comes to programming.
That was awesome. You don't necessarily have to add anything, but it made me quite curious. And so in this case, it's like a judgment call. Maybe you could add something here, but I don't necessarily think that you do need to. It may just be that the beat begs questions. So beats are great.
Yeah.
You want them to actually be self-contained, but they should generate from certain people, you know, a curiosity. So what I was wondering is what were those two things that you differentiated between programming pathways?
Oh yeah, so I differentiate between a pathway that is more focused on the machine architecture, so it's more low-level programming, And then I differentiate that from higher level programming, which works more with abstract libraries that basically already depends on lower level.
What is an abstract library in this context?
So it's basically programming that uses a lot of lower level functionality and basically handles all of the lower level functionality for you, such that you make you're basically casting higher level spells. You're not being as specific about what the machine is doing. You're writing language that calls for things that are important and do a lot more with less lines of code, typically.
In my understanding,
Thus, you're not managing the lower level complexity. You're dealing more with the higher level complexity of what's going on. So you're writing higher level commands, higher level codes that do higher level things.
okay, so correct me if I'm wrong then. So then, not that you could eventually have some skills over here, but it sounds like it's localized versus sort of global. Is that correct to some degree? Then let me see, tell me what I'm thinking. Let me know if I'm wrong.
I guess it depends.
So
in some ways, this is. Yeah, it kind of depends. Like sometimes the language, like sometimes it might be a language that's very global, but it simply abstracts away all of the lower level processes that happen with the computer. So for example, managing memory, you might have like a garbage collector manage memory for you. So you don't have to worry about that stuff. You worry about just basically writing language that does something that that already handles the lower level stuff for you. The machine language, the stuff that operates closer to what the machine is doing for you.
okay, so correct my visualization if I'm off here. So are you saying that perhaps you're using maybe component parts, and these component parts do a lot of individual functions for you, and you could program those parts or functionality or packages, but instead you are managing them and writing them together, and instead of actually,
Yes, yeah, exactly. It's like taking packages and libraries and applying them to build something unique. So using frameworks, using tools that people have already made that handle a lot of lower level things, and then using them to make something new.
So then, am I understanding you had to come up with sort of the high level global programming, but also the unique connectors between those parts, because the way that you're just putting them together is new, so you have to kind of make them speak to each other?
Yeah, that's a lot of what happens. One of the advantage of working, of working perhaps more on lower level, is that you can see exactly what everything is doing very easily. The benefit to abstraction is that you don't have to worry about seeing exactly what everything is doing. But that can create a little bit more ambiguity, a little bit more question marks of like what's going on sometimes. But
that's the area you prefer to work in. Thank you. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of would have figured that, but I didn't know there was actually sort of so clearly spelled out as a phenomenon in that market. You know what I mean? What are the labels used? Are those commonly used labels? Lower programming, high programming?
Low level programming and high level programming.
That's the standard part.
For example, so for example, there's assembly language, and that's basically the lowest level you can get. For about like one line in a higher level language, that would be like 20 lines in assembly language a lot of the time. And then there's like above that you have like languages that are still kind of high level, but they're on the lower end. You have like C and C++. And those are languages that are high level languages, but they still have to deal in things like memory management. Whereas other languages, you don't have to worry about managing your memory. It's just handled for you. So you can focus on other things.
Gotcha. Okay, that was great.
But yeah, I think like when it comes to programming, most of what people are doing is high level.
Okay.
There's some people that work like if you're into like robotics or like building like embedded systems, like you're working on designing like how like building a robot or building working like in the car industry and like figuring out how the gears are going to move with with as much efficiency as possible. If you want to make your code really, really efficient and really work well with the architecture it's running on, then lower level programming with assembly or with C or something is going to be more what you're going to be dealing in. If you're working with stuff like databases or web development, that's very high level. It's very abstract. It has a lot of libraries and dependencies and systems that people have already made that you're using. So,
yeah. Very cool. So it lacks the specificity in some cases and the exactitude when you reach for things, but it allows you to marshal a lot more power.
Yeah. Your time is much. Yeah, you can get a lot more power out of your time usually.
Gotcha. Thank you. So that really helped me to kind of clarify some things for me. I kind of knew that about you a bit just from knowing you over the years, but I didn't realize that the programming community was so stratified like that, although I never really quite got into that career at all. So thank you for that. One thing I'll just mention is that the way your beat is now, which I think is fine, people probably not know what that particular turn of phrase where you did the differential. Most people probably won't know what that means, but that's fine as long as you can explain it as eloquently as you just did. That was great. So if they ask you what that means, you can deliver like you just did, or expect them to just nod with being impressed. They're like, I know what that means, but I kind of get it that he's like a badass at programming. You know what I mean? So just be aware that could go either way. They may ask what that means, or they may just go, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I guess.
How do you respond to something like that, huh, Coach? By the way, like if they're just like impressed, like whoa, like it's that kind of just like is a moment where it's like, how do you like steer that into like a more like a conversational kind of style?
Well, there's a lot of options there. I can tell you like 2 or 3 that just popped in my mind now. First is you could still use what you would have used if they asked you what it meant. And before you give the definition, you say, all that really means is this. People like me to do this, by the way. Well, tip on life is when you say like the technical thing and they ask what it means, it's good to not be pompous, and it's good to actually take some effort to like show you're not. You just go like, well, that just means this. You know what I mean? I usually say a little thing like that, and then I give the definition, and that makes them, one, it's not so scary, and 2, you're not trying to be like on a high horse that you're using high language.
Yeah, and I guess another thing that kind of relates to that is.
Can I finish the thing real quick, Ben? I'll hand it off.
Yeah.
Is 1 or 2 other things came to me. The other one is you could just take it as a moment for self-deprecation and just say, oh, it's just no big deal or whatever, and laugh at yourself and just kind of shrug it off like that. Or you could actually kind of like do like a judo move on it, so to speak, where they basically gave you shine. So instead of addressing this, another tip on life, this works great. They gave you shine by doing that. So you actually can come at different ways. Like, comedy can work on different layers of a word. You can, make fun of the word because of its language, of its social context, because of the way the person's accent was when they said the word. There's lots of things you could jump from. So in this case, you actually just shine back at them. You skip the actual topic and you just address that they said, wow. And then you go, oh, and I like this thing you're wearing, or, oh, I see you're doing this thing with this thing you bought at the store. And you just show strong interests shine back towards them. Find something you do find curious and show your shiny curiosity. You can do that as well. So those are like 3 ways you can play it right there. I don't know if there are that many more. I'm sure there are. But those 3 that jumped to my mind. Ben?
Yeah, sounds good. I also sometimes what I do, I'll let you go, Ben, in just a sec. Just wanted to just mention, like if somebody compliments you, then you can just find something good about them and then just compliment them on that. And then it creates this sort of like interesting, cool moment where it's like, oh, you think that I'm great at this. I think you're really cool at this. And it's sort of like, cool. We both think of each other highly in that way. So, yeah.
So several ways you can actually play it and play it shiny while, kind of taking a different tack depending on, what you feel is best for your style or the moment. Ben, back to you.
Yeah, so I was just going to say another way of looking, at the thing, at like the high level versus low level programming concept is another concept that very much so relates to this, and is a reason why the discussion comes up so much. Is the concept of reinventing the wheel. There's always this battle of like, how much do I want to make myself versus how much do I want to use other people's stuff.
Right.
So when you're working more with higher level programming, you're using more of what other people have built. You're reinventing the wheel less. Whereas if you're working more with lower level programming, you're using more of your own stuff. You're building your own systems more. You're reinventing the wheel more, I guess. But there's some advantages to that. Most notably is the efficiency and also less ambiguity, because you're actually more you're more in control of everything, which can be helpful when you're working with like vehicles or other machines that you really want to run well and efficiently.
Gotcha. Very cool. So your next page.
Yeah, for sure. So here I talk about relationship prospects. I don't really have any plans right now to attempt to go out and find a romantic partner. The reason for that is not that I am not attracted to the idea, but rather that I am a very busy person with many heroic visions and goals in mind that I need to be able to fulfill. Considering that it is a given that I will eventually need to obtain a job, that simply doesn't give me much room for another person in my life. On top of that, I feel that in order for things to work out, and with all of the time that I will be spending dedicated to the Podlair cause, it is only natural to expect that any long-term partner become or already be Podlair as well. In short, I'm very much open to the idea, but the standards are quite high and niche.
What was the last word?
Niche. So I guess kind of narrow, kind of specific.
I see. Can you read that, just the last half of that sentence for me?
Oh, sure.
I just know that was very powerful, and I was like really like flowing along with it. And just the word niche at the end is something about it I didn't quite.
Niche.
I was wondering, is he saying niche or is he saying niche?
He's saying, well, I guess you could pronounce it different ways, but that's, I think.
Yeah, I thought those were the same thing, but I could be wrong. I just thought that those were the same thing. I didn't know there was a difference.
No. I guess context. No. So that is how you use it. So can you just read the last bit for me again?
Sure, but the standards are quite high and niche.
Quite high and niche. Okay.
I mean, I could remove niche. I was actually kind of, because I originally just had it, so it was like, but the standards are quite high, but I wanted to add something on top of it just to make it a little bit smoother. So I just put that in there, but.
Yeah, I think it sounds good. Standards are very quite high, so you have high standards, and also very niche in the sense that
it's kind of hard.
Your lifestyle is very specific, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I got you.
It doesn't leave a lot of room for a lot of other. I'm trying to understand myself, actually, just trying to like speak out loud, think out loud.
I really like the idea you were going for there. Question. What were the last 3 words of the sentence?
High and niche.
High A.
And.
And I got you.
Yep.
Okay. That helped me, actually. I think maybe I didn't hear that word.
I was wondering, like, is there something like
maybe I kind of
Ben
slurred
said
a
that
little
was
bit.
kind of like difficult to understand? I
I
thought it made sense.
was quite a high niche. Yeah, high niche. And I was like, or high niche. I'm like, I didn't quite get that. So high a niche, right?
And yeah, high standards and very niche.
Question: would it change the meaning at all to say quite high of a niche?
Let's see. It says the standards are quite high and niche.
Oh, and
so it would. Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Thank you. Okay, yeah. You're going to need to enunciate the D on that and, because it sounded a little bit like and or like high a niche.
Okay. And I was saying and. I mean.
That's probably me.
I thought
me then.
I don't know.
But that's what happened. In case you're wondering.
Yeah.
I did not hear the D on the and. That changed the relationship of the words.
I think I was speaking pretty fast too, so it may have sounded like an or because of.
No, that makes total sense. I totally get it now. Thank you.
I think in person, like, it would have worked great, but like because of the hangout, it can sometimes some of the stuff can get lost. It can be hard to hear, you know.
Yeah. No, but actually in that case, that's actually great. That's a great use of words. That makes total sense. It's very descriptive.
Awesome. So, and then my last one that I have for today, I talk about how I got into typology. I discovered typology from a simple Google search during my sophomore year of high school. I, at the time, had a speculation about the possibility of scientifically classifying humans into different categories. And through a bunch of web surfing, I began browsing and using typology forums and becoming a member of Typology Town. Typology really helped me develop a sense of wonder about the human condition and the meaning of existence that I hadn't had before, as I spent so much time exploring all the various types and the roles that they supposedly play in the world. Because, you know, we know that types are not, you know, proven or anything to actually being existing phenomena. It gave me a sense of what a real life role playing game was like before becoming a member of Podlayer.
Excellent. One thing I was wondering, that little aside that you did, one thing you can do in the writing up, you can even think in your head like that, is perhaps put that little aside you did in parentheses. And that can mean that it's an optional. You may use that or you may not.
Yeah, I think that would be good. I actually didn't write that down, but I knew like I should probably like say something about that, or it might be helpful to. Because like I just had supposedly in there, so it would be kind of like, okay, so why the supposedly, man? You know, so you know, it's kind of like, but
say what you put there and just put little parentheses on it. That way you can kind of like even when you do it, you know you want. It's like I do a little aside. That's how you did it right there and worked very effectively.
Nice. Yeah. So I put it in parentheses, or a brief statement that gives the aside in parentheses.
Nice. Was that the last beat you said?
Yep, that was the last beat that I have for today.
All right, excellent. Glenn, did you have anything kind of come to your mind or develop?
Not to the extent that Ben has. I'm still trying to figure out how to word the beats into into full paragraphs and stuff. Like there's several sentences. I think Ben went over about like how many beats there?
7.
7 beats. Oh, okay. More than I thought.
Oh, actually, it was 6. My bad. It was 6.
Oh, okay. Yeah, 6. So yeah, I think that maybe we could possibly work on one then. So
all right, so how about Ben go first, since you and I have been kind of got like a flow on that, and you can see how we do it, Glenn. So what'll happen is he's gonna kind of just talk to me about a beat, kind of just explain to me friend to friend, and then at the end of that, while it's hot, he's gonna then try to write down sort of what he said. And while he's doing that, you'll do the part where you just take a beat and just explain it to me. Just kind of explain to me what you want to say. Don't worry about sentences. Don't worry about length right now. Just try it in a pithy way to just explain to me that beat. That make sense?
Yeah, okay.
Try. So we'll start with Ben. So Ben, go ahead. Why don't you take a beat and just sort of tell me about it.
Nice. So the next beat that I have to work on is how I got into Podlayer. I have a lot of stuff written here, but I figured we can just talk about it, and then I can quickly assemble what I've written into a full-blown beat. So I got into Podlayer through typology, and I've told you guys about this, but I was browsing YouTube. I was looking specifically. I remember in August of 2012. I don't need to say the exact date or anything. I was looking through the most recent YouTube videos on MBTI, because that's one thing I like to do, is I like to look at the most recent stuff on a given topic. I remember I found so many forum threads and interesting YouTube videos just searching most recent for Podlayer, and it a lot of stuff has come from that, because if anybody says something out on the internet, good chance it's gonna be on Google somewhere. But yeah, so that's what I was doing with MBTI. I was tracking what people were doing, and I came across a video which was the Dismantling MBTI video by Ademus. I just happened to come across it at that point. I had seen some of Ademus's work before. I think that I'm not sure if I had seen other stuff, but the one thing I know I did see was the many faces of the INFJ, and it was kind of cool because that's what I thought I was at the time. So that was kind of interesting and coincidental. But yeah, so I came across Ademus's video. I at the time was quite skeptical of the MBTI's empiricism and its scientific, worth. And I wanted more of people bashing the MBTI. I didn't think there was enough of that. If you go to other areas, any controversy, any major thing that's happening, right, that has a significant influence, there's going to be people who are against it and people are for it. And people who are against it are going to have people who, will straight up bash the thing. But MBTI, it seemed like when people had a negative opinion about it, they were kind of wishy-washy, or they didn't really, it's almost like they weren't completely sure of themselves. And that's something that I didn't really like. So I was looking more for people who actually were this is totally pseudoscientific. With astrology, you would get that. You would find people out there who would say that, but with MBTI it didn't happen nearly as much. But then I saw Ademus's video. I was like, wow, he's making all these points I've been thinking about, in the back of my head for a long time, about why the MBTI, isn't scientific, or doesn't isn't what it says it is. So I started commenting on the video. I eventually, I said I would look into Podlayer. He made really good points, et cetera, et cetera. And then I started arguing with people in the comments, who were totally not giving the video as much, credit as it was worth. I could see even as somebody who knew nothing about Podlayer, I could see you're not giving this guy credit for his arguments properly.
Yeah, I hate it when that happens.
So,
I really felt that a lot when it came to Ademus. And then even when it came to myself, when I would critique it a little bit, and then people would just be like, whoa, and I'd be like, come on, man. You got to at least respect that I just put some data there, right? on that post. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
It's something kind of
good.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I was really into debate at the time, so I had fun, arguing with people in the comments. And yeah, from there it actually went a little bit further. There was kind of a couple-month period where I was more sort of in the outer rings of Podlayer. I was just more an observer who was, was friendly and so forth. But I was invited, I believe, but there was one point where I think I was like emailed to join like Wrapped or something. And that's how I actually became a member of Podlayer, was through that, as I got involved in the PSAs and so forth.
Gotcha. I'm curious, where in the journey did you, because it sounds like you were moved by the arguments being made,
Mm-hmm.
and then it sounds like you then came to meet some people and you were moved by the conduct.
Mm-hmm.
But the critical third one is, when did you, and it may be stages to this, but and maybe this needs to be another beat on its own, but I would definitely wonder on this topic is when you saw the phenomenon, the Mojo phenomenon, where you were like, oh, do you mean, and you started because, you know, actually seeing something and getting strength from the visual ability that you're seeing it. Yeah, because you're getting confidence from, wow, those are very good arguments that are written there. And then you interact and you see the way they conduct themselves and how much work effort they put. You're like, okay, that conduct is cool. Do you know what I mean? But then there's the third, which is there something to the data? Can you kind of maybe talk a little about your relationship to kind of taking on the data?
Yeah, so I mean, at first I didn't really know exactly, because like I saw Demas and other people were talking about the data, and I didn't really know what that was at first. I had to actually look into it, but I began going to the various browsing the website and finding samples and looking at YouTube videos, and I wasn't exactly sure about like all the details of the phenomenon. Like I could see like but I was starting to pick up on things. And I think one major critical element is I had a strong sense that there was really something to this. Like as I was looking at the different mojos and so forth, that this wasn't like just something that, that was like pulled out of a hat. This was like, I could actually see, okay, there's something going on here and I want to figure out what it is. So I think that's what drew me closer and closer. And then from there, I was able to see it clearer and clearer, as I became more committed and a member of Podlayer, that came naturally for me.
I want to interject here.
Sure.
I remember when I first, like the first time that it was mainly the arguments at first, which were like compelling to me. I think Ben would agree here. That was kind of like initially what got me. But after that, I kind of also, like once I actually had my video sent over, it was sort of like this kind of like moment where I was like, oh, I wonder what I'm going to be, right? Like if I'm right.
Yeah, I had that too.
If I'm a Zymie or if I'm something else, right? I was like, whatever it is, that is what it is, and that's going to be, what I'm going to go with. But then, yeah, when I got the result back, and then I found that I was an IG, then I was like, besides the feelings, when it was actually like presented to me, like, oh, you're an IG because of these cues, then I started looking at the time codes. Then I started looking at my video, and I was like, what? Holy shit! How did I not see this before? It was kind of like a big moment. And then I was like, I was a bit like quick. I was just like, yeah, this is actually, this is unlike anything that I've ever experienced. And then I was like, yeah, this has to be right. I just kind of like almost religiously just kind of just accepted it. But then later I kind of like, had to come to grips with the fact that I know you can't just like accept things like that. You have to also question it and kind of like, go through the process of like looking at other samples and seeing how real it is. But that was like a really...
I have a question about that. So you said there was like a sort of religious aspect, but then you also said that you were looking at the time codes and seeing something. So was it a sort of a mixture of the two, or I'm trying to...
It was sort of like undeniable. So I was just sort of like hit with the fact that these cues, they're observable, they're real, right? And I was like on a high with that kind of in a way. And, when you're in those kind of states, it's sort of like you might not have fully thought through something, and you kind of just like decide a little bit too quickly before you've crystallized everything in your head a little bit. that, you know, like maybe there's something wrong here, or maybe something's off here, or something like that, right? But I was like, no, 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 no. I didn't even say no. I just kind of like, yeah, this is like a revelation kind of moment. It was like it was a pretty notable moment there. Not huge, just like I'm kind of like emphasizing, trying to make it sound more impactful than it really is. But it was kind of like a moment. I was like, my like I noticed like, oh wow, there's something to this, and then I kind of didn't really question that, and then I just kind of went with it anyway. But you know, as I kind of like went, kind of like regained, I guess after a certain point, you know, naturally there's a point where you sort of like, you know, you kind of have to deal with whatever choices that you make or whatever, and you kind of have to, you know, I've never been drunk or anything, but sort of like, you know, you kind of get high off of something, you kind of like inebriated, and then you kind of like come out of that state, you know what I mean? Like, so then reality kind of sets in, right? And so I have those kinds of thoughts come after me, and then those came with insights too. Then I was like, when I looked at the data, when I kept looking, I was like, no, this is real, you know, this is like, I'm trying to be, you know, like a devil's advocate kind of thing, but the more I keep trying to look at the data, the more I question it, the more it just seems to fit. And so then I started looking at other people. Then I started looking at like all the people that are Naiji, all the people that are Nija. Then I was starting to see this, that's the pattern. Like it started to make sense as I started looking through the collages, looking through the pictures. It was kind of like a little bit hard for me to see in other people. But when I first saw the cues for myself, I don't know, like I just like a few cues here and there, just like the eye drifting and whatever, this and that just kind of like, that was kind of like a bit stunning. And then I was just like, yeah, this is absolutely something here. And because it was like, you know, it just, you know, like it was undeniable. It's sort of like an apple drops, right? Then you see the apple. It's like, yeah, the apple dropped, hit the floor at exactly 2 seconds. And it's like, yeah, it was that sort of thing. So I don't mean to go on here, but like that's kind of like how it felt.
No, I think it is an important moment because you are basically, I mean, unless, and this one I'm talking about too, is this basically means that there's some sort of like all pervasive species-wide program going on that, you know, it has nature, nurture, free will, but there's like a math to it. So that's pretty stunning unless, and I don't want to speak for you, I don't know where you were already highly suspecting that was the case, and this verified it. Okay, was that the case? You suspected that there was something like this going on, but you didn't think it had been highlighted yet, or was that kind of stunning that whatever's the case? I'm just curious, because I guess being involved in typology, you were actually inclined to believe in qualia.
I guess I don't know if I would have called it that. I just knew that I wanted to know more about myself, and I knew that there was something to that, even though it was kind of a little bit hard for me to, you know, like understand or like be able to say it or even conceptualize it in a very kind of like concrete kind of way. I was just like very, very much sort of like seeing what was going to come of that endeavor that I was embarking on. So it felt very yin. It felt very much like this is like very much against, you know, what typical people kind of do. They just kind of like go out and they get their jobs. But I was like, I need to kind of like do a little bit of self-exploring here to figure out, you know, what's important here. And so I did that with my whole like trying to understand myself and trying to understand who I am and what I am and how I work, so I can use that to my advantage instead of having sort of like one hand tied behind your back kind of thing, you know. But yeah, you were saying some other stuff there before. I want to comment on that too, which is huh?
Ben did or myself?
No, you did. You were saying something there
About
like this, like, you know, like finding out about the phenomenon species wide kind of thing.
So basically just that there's sort of the realization perhaps that it's going on with you in some way, like you said, but then you kind of ride that high and you see if it's there with the data, it's there, and then that's a high, but then you said it extended out to where you're.
I know what I was going to say. Yeah, what I was thinking there was it kind of made me inspired these thoughts, which is like when it came to Padlet, I knew that there was something there, you know, like from the very beginning when I started going on this journey. I always knew that there was something there at the end of the tunnel, you know, or at the end of the rainbow, if you will. But then when I came across Paul there, I knew that there had to be something to it, sort of like that there is, you're right, but you don't know how to speak it at that particular moment in time. Like, I don't have the debating skills, please. Like, I don't have it. I don't know how to say it. I don't know how to articulate the words, but I know that I'm absolutely right on this. And then you're just like, you go at that sort of, it feels a little bit so, because you can't.
So am I saying that you had like an intuitive given?
Yeah, like I intuitively, I knew that there was something right about it because I saw enough of the map of it.
Right? Is that something right? Let me know if I'm not just asking a question. Was that, did you suspect that the innate ways that humans had innate ways and that you could read it like an animal reading, or what was it you kind of just, did you suspect programming? Do you know what inkling of what it is you were suspecting?
I guess it was like to confirm that, like everything that I was working towards had a purpose to it. But I always knew that it did have a purpose to it, which was like I would learn something about myself. Like that was kind of like, it's hard for me to like think in those terms because I have to really be in that mindset in order to really speak about it currently, in the moment. Right. But I'm guessing, like I was wanting to sort of like, what's the word? Confirm to myself and confirm to, I guess mainly to myself, that there is something to this. Like there is something to qualia, I guess you could say. There is something to like the way people work. And then having Ademus explain it in his posts and stuff, that was one thing that kind of like helped make me see like, yeah, there is something to this, right? Like there are these types or whatever, and they do work differently from one another. Because the idea that it didn't exist, it seemed kind of a little bit disheartening. Like if everyone is just, there is no such thing as a mojo. Everyone is just kind of like biologically just like, just a human, you know what I mean? Like, but they don't have the mojo phenomenon to them. So they're all kind of like, sort of like blank slates in a way. That didn't really appeal to me. And I guess that was kind of a little bit of a weakness. I guess it still kind of is a little bit of weakness because I'm not entirely ready for that truth if that happens to be the truth, which, I don't think it is the truth, but, I'm kind of like try to prepare myself for whatever it is that, natural law says is going to be what it is. So then if that's what natural law says, then that's what natural law says, I guess. But I don't think that that's actually the case. That's very like a very small percentage that might be the reality of things. But I thought that there was actually something to it. And, when I found out that I was actually an IG, then I started getting the time codes, it just, felt like reassuring that, I'm on the right path here. And then it just got even more windy and more complicated and more nuanced and just kind of like bigger than what I initially thought it was. But I kind of like needed to have those givens met in a way. And then it could give me the currency that I needed in order to keep playing the game further from there. If that makes sense.
It does. That's why I'm working so hard on the Rosetta Stone and why getting the Samurai Server program all tidied up and awesome, got everything going, and have a little survey package to people, because being able to give them some POC as soon as possible, then that's like, okay, I'll read more of what you're saying, or I'll watch more of your vlogs because you gave me some evidence to look at. I think I'm seeing something that, and you kind of build that trust that there's actually data here. It's not just a goose chase. There's actually something truly being pursued.
Yeah, you can never have all of truth, but like
no,
when truth says that this is truth, you kind of listen to it, right? You just kind of be like, yeah, there's something definitely here. And then getting all the answers to all the questions that surround that one main thing, then that takes more delving into.
Talk about this intuitive givens. It's a lot of part about being a Nai Mojo, which you kind of work this way, which seems very vague and therefore maybe a bit yin, but actually it's quite yang because, as you said, it's quite short. So, for example, early on, which is how I even came into like the typology scene, is I was trying to figure out what's going on in the sense of story. If you look at the theory of Pod Layer, it's about humans and their story, what goes on with existence. But I was interested in like why they're doing what they're doing as compared critically to what they think it is. And so it's Naiji, something we do a lot. Baiji do it their way as well, but it tends to be more specific with the Vi, which is with Nai, you just can take a global look at them, and when they say things or do things, it's based off of their global interpretation of themselves. And you can say, my Nai says yay or nay as to whether or not you have correctly assessed yourself as a holistic entity. Do you know what I mean? So for example, like with how like the emoji reading even started, is my dad, for example, thought he was a ISFJ based on something. And I'm like, no, you're not. I just knew, no. This is before I knew about what the cues were exactly, or what the percentage is between same-sex family members. I just knew that that's not true.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And then and the same thing with Jailene, I was like, your face is doing these things. That's what's showing this. And so, but I knew that that was the case before I could quite get my eye on the tracks in the ground. So like a jaguar went by here. How do you know? I just do. And there's the track. You see the track? There's a lot of that with Nai. Like I knew I was going to find a jaguar track before I saw the jaguar track. I don't even know what environmental signals were alerting my Nai to the fact that there was a major pattern blip on the radar in the area. I just did. And then you like hone in off with your V, and that V goes around the environment looking for, why is my Nai tripping? You know what I mean? My Nai's tripping on something. It's like something is either off or on, like you said. Like I'm sure I need to go here, or I'm sure that I'm not supposed to be here. Do you know what I mean? And then you look, and then there it was. That's how it was for me. For example, when I took a survey of different people I knew in my life before I left, you know, the East Coast on my voyage, is I took a survey to see what people thought they were. And I was like, I didn't agree with a lot of it. And the same thing when I actually first started meeting people in the typology community when I first came out to California, is they would say what they almost were they were rarely right. And I knew that. I knew they were wrong about what type they were, even though I didn't have this language spelled out. Don't get me wrong. My family are avid people readers. So I've always been good at saying, oh, that person's face is doing this. That person's hand's going to their pocket, that kind of thing. But more like a, you know, not designed for like a quality investigation. It's more like an individual, like pointing out that Glenn is like this. And you're like, how do you know that? Because last week he did this, and 2 minutes ago he did that, and right now he's doing this. And you saw that Stan last week, and like that kind of thing. That's kind of how I've always been very gifted, and my family does it a lot, arguing over what people are and what they're doing. So visually, kind of like using visual, like, aha, see that? Or pause the movie. Look at his face now. We've always kind of did that. But my purpose was not to find like quality of programming language. I was actually trying to come from the point of view of being a hero, you know, the chosen one in the story. I was coming from the point of view of spirit form, like shaman. But you know, if you do enough shamanic rituals, you might end up with E equals MC squared. So you know what I mean? I was getting my shaman on, and I end up finding this programming language of human quality. Like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it really does feel like a programming language. Like in programming, like there's, and also the way programming is taught, it's taught with like color coding, like to symbolize different meaning for different types. Like for example, like we use like objective versus subjective, like the part of the power that's like the E versus the I, right? So that indicates whether the power is objective or subjective. I mean, that's programming. You're programming, like it's a symbolic meaning that has like a math to it. So
yeah, very true. Did you have some more to share there, Glenn, or should we head back to Ben?
I guess I could just mention real quick the whole idea of that you mentioned about like you saw the jaguar and that sort of thing, which is like you already know that you saw something, and there is definitely something to that, and that's why you're on the chase or whatever to kind of like hunt down the animal or whatever. But and so a lot of times it's sort of like you already know that there is something going on, even though you may not know exactly what it is. In this case, you knew that it was going to be like this specific, like cat, and you kind of just needed to just kind of like confirm that like that is definitely a leopard, because then you start to search for the piece of evidence afterwards, which is the paw print. But you kind of like already knew that, like based on the motifs that are like taking place here, I just know that that this is the animal that is doing this. Given like all of these pings that are like taking place, like they're all just kind of like leading into this. So like that V detail, it just sort of like, I guess you could get it, but it's sort of like you don't necessarily need to get it in order to convince yourself, but it helps a lot.
And you need it at some point, even if you're Ni Alpha, at some point in the peak pathway, even if it's polar, you need to make sure that we can go the longest without that confirmation. But you do want that, visual confirmation, like, aha, I knew it, zombies. You know what I mean? At some point, you know what I mean? You'll need that, and then that gives you confidence, though, and you keep coming back when you find it. And if you're doing it right, you should keep being able to find that evidence.
Yeah, and it's also really helpful in that, even though it kind of just feels like, I know that I was going to be there, it can always sort of like help you to sort of like understand that a little bit better, right? Because it's sort of like, I knew that it was a jaguar, but there were certain things I wasn't totally sure on, and those questions or those, issues, they kind of were alleviated when I finally kind of like made the connection there. And then it makes you feel, then you could sort of like, it helps to update your worldview a little bit more. It's like, right, yeah, that makes sense. So you can work the other way around, which is sort of like your Ni. You can kind of like prepare for those moments before they occur, or you can go about it by exposing yourself to the evidence first, and then having yourself learn it that way. But either way, you're kind of like becoming more understanding of what's going on around you, the truth that's taking place. It's really interesting talking about this, because it's like, this is like how we live, and this is how we think, right? Yeah. And so to know that I'm thinking, the way that I see the world is very similar to the way that you see the world, and Ben sees the world, and Mitchell sees the world, and all these other people in the world that are also Naiji, it's very eerie and also very cool, which is like, this is a thing, this is, and so, like, even having you talk to me about these kinds of things, it also at the same time, it just reaffirms that we are both seeing the same thing. Very, given something like that's relatable between you and I. Yeah. It's kind of like, obviously there's something to that. And it doesn't, like, I mean, I'm able to have this kind of like experience specifically with Naiji to Naiji, but even when other people are talking about stuff that has nothing to do with like Mojo, like, like when we confirm as truth seekers that, like something is happening, and empirically understanding that, when the pen dropped, it took 2 seconds or whatever, it's kind of cool to just be like, yeah, this person, they're in the same headspace that I'm in. That's just cool. That just feels like,
yeah, and particularly if it's because you are both seeing truth.
Yeah.
As compared to you're both sharing a bias, being able to independently show up the same place, you're like, I knew it. I found me some, truth of math about how things work.
And it's also cool.
So, like I said, and so did you, and that means that we were two humans having the same headspace with truth together. That's really cool.
Yeah, like it's really cool. Like it reminds me of like watching a movie together with somebody. Like like everyone is kind of experiencing the same thing, but it's also at the same time, it's not always exactly the same, because even when it's the same Mojo, even when it's the same sex, even when it's the same age group, it's going to be differences. And so being kind of like open to that is always cool too, because like, yeah, I took this out of the movie. I got this kind of like idea from it. But then they're like, yeah, and then also this other thing too. I was like, oh yeah, I noticed that too, but I didn't have the words to describe it. But it's cool that you were able to kind of like point that out, because now it kind of like makes me be able to appreciate the experience that much better, appreciate the movie, and just kind of like learn a little bit more about life from having that exchange. So yeah, I guess that's what I wanted to share there.
That's very cool. While Ben goes now and kind of gives you what he's been doing, do you want to try and see if you can capture any of that? Try to write some of it down, either in bullet point form or sentence form, whatever's best for you. Just try to capture some of what you gave there, because really a lot of great stuff. And maybe it's one beat, maybe it's more, but do just kind of like try to capture. Ben, what do you got for us?
Right. So I didn't actually write that down yet. I wasn't actually sure, but like I was following along with what Glenn was saying, and we never actually transitioned away from just talking about it to writing it down. So I guess maybe I should do that right now.
Okay. Cool?
Yeah, that sounds good. Because I think we covered lots of good stuff, and I have a lot written down as well. So
okay, I'll be right back, and it's ready.
Well, it sounds good. All right. I think I have a beat ready.
Cool.
A lot of it I'd already written actually, but I just you know, I put all the bullet points into sentences and I add some stuff. So
Take it away.
awesome. So during the summer, before my junior year of high school, I was browsing YouTube for most recent MBTI videos, and I came across Ademus's Dismantling Typology MBTI video. I was happy to see it because I was looking for a series opponent of the MBTI for some time, and had already shared and understood many of his criticisms. I started looking into Podlair after doing that, and after I started looking into Podlair, I began to see the phenomenon. I requested a video read and eventually participated in the Podlair PSA program that had started at around the same time that I got involved. I learned a lot about people reading, voicing, producing media, outreach, and building communities, and haven't looked back since.
Nice.
Yeah, it's like I need to sum up all the things that this did for me. I'm like, all right, let's just check off the list here.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It makes sense too. Like, how could you ever go back? Because it's like there's no reason to go back. So, like, you just keep moving forward, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Get that truth. Yum 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 yum. Seriously, the Podlair team, we're like Pac-Men or Pac people for truth. Like yum 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 more. Seriously, we quasi-death hardcore.
Yeah, it's truly a lot.
It is. I like that. We have a culture of like quasi-deathing to higher wisdom and higher character. That's
Yeah, it's cool because like we're very hardcore, but we're not like we can also be like very I guess casual at the same time. Like we're not like strict, you know what I mean?
No, not strict. No.
But like a lot of people believe like in order to live like a really hardcore like high energy life, you need to be like really strict. I don't know.
Yeah, that's
But
true.
we're all conservatives here, you know.
Yeah, we do have very high standards for each
High
other.
standards. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's the way I would put it.
No, because a lot of times, like I actually do stuff, and I realize, oh, I should put, like I just did it recently. I should put that up for credit. You know what I mean? To kind of like set example and so forth. But I'm just having a good like data. You know, more with the program. You know what I mean? Better pictures, purification, and I'm like, oh yeah, I've done a bunch of work. I should go, post that in the town square. You know what I mean? Because it's good for morale and things like that. For myself, I'm like, I would just do this. It's all good. All right, I think Glenn might still be working. Do you?
You can do another one if you want.
Yeah, I was thinking. You want to go ahead, Ben? What do you
Yeah, let's see. So here I start to get into the challenges, and the first challenge I talk about is having the responsibility of reflecting on and updating your opinions and code of ethics. So we were just talking about like quasi-deathing a lot, and this is basically what it is you have to constantly like think about your every decision that you make, and you have to question like, okay, is this really the right way for me to be going, or am I really doing the right thing here? And ever since I've gotten involved with Podlair, I've begun to think about that a lot more. Whereas beforehand, I was my mindset. I did care about these things, as people tend to do, but I didn't take it as seriously because, I had less awareness of my overall character. I think was a really big one. But then on top of that, there's also like the amount of weight of my character wasn't as high. I was more so like just for most of my life, I was just sort of like hidden away. I wasn't actually out conducting myself and doing anything. So it adds more significance. Having more awareness and also doing more heroic things, being more of a heroic pioneer. The weight of your actions matter more. You have more responsibilities. So it's had a big impact on me, on the amount that I reflect on every decision that I make.
And responsibility. It's not like it's just a burden like that. It's actually because it's so awesome. you get these gifts. You realize, wow, I have a peak pathway, I have these cool abilities and blah, blah, and that's all true. But that comes with the responsibility. You know what I mean? Peter, Parker's dad, or uncle anyway, uncle was it Ben? You know what I mean? Great power comes great responsibility. It's a cliche, but really it's true. That once you realize, oh, that's how it works. Oh, it's supposed to be working better than it's working now. Oh, I'm a part of that. My chosen one story is a part of how this story of humans is going. It's all related. But it's wonderful. You feel part of something really, beautiful, and it helps you love your fellow humans. So that's great. But then, that means, oh, okay, we're all in this together. We're doing this thing. So you have the responsibility to do that thing well, to do well by your fellow humans. It brings that in. But that's part of the new sense of community you have with your fellow humans. So that's, it's worth it, but the juice is worth a squeeze, but the squeeze does go up. There is an increase, in heroic squeeze, but purpose does that.
Yeah, and also like the general culture. I guess culture, but the way that people tend to treat. Like, for example, when somebody gets in an argument, for example, they disagree on something. What tends to happen is there's this kind of ideas, people feel really passionately about it, and then like there's kind of this period where they just sort of like agree to disagree, and then they go their separate ways. And I understand that like that's there for a reason, and it plays an important role. But it seems like it's kind of like there's that energy isn't really being used productively. It seems like people are kind of like compensating by, like people feel very strongly about things, but then suddenly there's like this relativist mindset that fills the room that we all just like shouldn't be like continuing to strive to find the right answers on the subject. Right. And that's something that really changed.
Yeah, I think there's got to be a balance between you need to constantly strive to try and achieve the best answer, which would then automatically, if it was good enough, truth enough, it would create consensus. The command of truth would create consensus. But then it has to be balanced by certain things will just be working cases for a while.
Yeah, exactly.
There will always be cases that in one's lifetime, they're in flux. So there's not that just that truth that will cause consensus, that self-evident, that manifest truth, or way that it can be looked at to get that auto consensus. So
yeah, it's kind of like you want that. Like, I see this one thing, and that'll be the one thing that kind of wins everybody over, but it doesn't. It's kind of like hits you with like a ton of bricks. Like, no, you're not gonna win. You're not gonna convince everyone just by saying that one thing. You kind of need to do all this other stuff, and some people they just don't want to hear what you have to say, and it does feel like, oh, it's so shitty, It's like I don't want to say agree to disagree, but it's like I don't have the willpower to deal with this right now. I have so many other things going on with my life, and trying to get into this big thing with this whole one little topic here, this one little debate.
And it's not really well. Sometimes it's like where I think like there's agreement to disagree like a little bit too early, but sometimes it's like, but it's more like the reasoning for it. It's like the root cause, like what's really going on here. A lot of the time people kind of develop, this relativist idea about opinions where it's not just like that they're agreeing to disagree and that they're going to like work on their own cases. It's that they literally think that like everyone had like that this right to your own perspective just like transcends argument or criticism. It's like,
okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, because myself, when I say agree, disagree, first of all, I am quite open to lengthy debates and taking things on. I find it enjoyable. I like the length, I like the breadth, I like the intensity. So I do enjoy that. But you did get to the point where you are diminishing returns or just kind of smashing the same things against each other. And so that kind of becomes a little pointless and boring, futile. So for me, when I do finally get to the point of saying like, agree, disagree, what I really mean is, well, agree, disagree until some new significant development comes up. obviously we're both still working on the cases, and because we believe it. Because if we're a real seeker, if you believe it's true, that means you're investigating. You're investigating over there, and so hopefully some new rock will get turned over that'll give you, aha! I didn't have this last time we agreed, disagreed. So let's reopen that. And then you rehash and see what that new development changes things or doesn't. And then you get as far as you can with that. And you're like, okay, agree, disagree. Until ... the next new development that's relevant.
That's kind of how it is for, perception leads, and specifically interpretives, and Naiji, like this is how it is for us. It's always ... It never actually comes to a point of closure. It's always like,
in all fairness, that element is something that anyone can have. It tends to be more so in directives. Even pilots tend to we're still in contest, even though we're friends and we're in different gyms right now. I'm lifting this bench thinking that I'm good out there. So, pilots do it too, but hunters, because the worldview preference, tend to be the most oriented towards an ongoing chess match throughout our entire lives. And that's how you do friendship. That's how you show love. It means
by lifting random benches. Oh man.
No, I get what you're saying though. Yeah.
But yeah, so that for that reason, I guess I've been kind of I've been sort of sensitive to the concept of always checking and criticizing my actions, criticizing in terms of good productive criticism, productive something that's more inspired towards growth, constantly basically quasi-deathing and improving what's already there, even if that means sacrificing what I originally thought to be true about myself or how I should be doing things. So I think I can make a good beat out of that. It's kind of more of a general beat that I think a lot of people will relate to, but I think it should go in there because it's really, it's a huge benefit that.
But using yourself as an example is a great way to make that point and make it personal. I think that'd be great. Okay, why don't you go try and capture that then?
Yeah, for sure.
What was that? I feel like I might want to get that too.
Oh yeah, so just basically always improving, always constantly checking whether your actions are, and your decisions and your opinions are really correct, and always striving to improve them. And it can be hard to do that because oftentimes, when it comes to opinions and so forth, it takes remolding, it takes a lot of remolding yourself or your opinions, which can be hard to do because it can feel painful sometimes. But it feels rewarding.
And then there's also the agree to disagree thing too, which is
and that's just why it was kind of hard. That just kind of highlights the difference for me personally, was the way that I thought about self-improvement before I became a member of Podlayer versus what I think now. Before, and I think it's not just the agree disagree thing. I think it's I think it, if I had to describe it, it's basically saying that whatever anybody thinks they should be doing for themselves is the right thing. Is that mindset? That tends to be what my parents believe. That tends to be what I believed before I became a member of Podlayer. Is that mindset, and that's really, I think, something really huge that changed for me. Is I began to think more okay, it's not just what I think is best for me. There are some things that I'm honestly, some habits I have that aren't good, some things I'm not doing right that are wrong. And I think I had some sense of that before, it's not entirely that way, but
sort of it's all right. It's all right. It's kind of faux zen in a way, right? It's it's all okay. It's just if this isn't perfect and blah, 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 but it's okay. And, the fact that, there's a disagreement between me and you guys, that's okay. but it's not really okay. There's like obviously something that needs to be worked on there, like between you and your parents, or you and this friend, or whatever the case might be. It's something that needs to be worked on, and you shouldn't ignore that there's something that needs to be addressed there. Definitely that there should be something done, like the way that you sit in your chair, for example, like you know, like it's unhealthy.
Posture, I guess.
Yeah, like posture. You made an example. I didn't remember it exactly, but I just used whatever. So like, yeah, there's always things that you can do better, and so acknowledging that instead of just trying to put a band-aid on it or trying to keep it fuzzy so that you don't have to deal with, you know, the fact that there's something that needs to be addressed there. So yeah, like I you know, like it's the way that I think the way in which it all works is sort of like black and white. Like grays only exist because you haven't zoomed in enough to where you can see the individual specks of black and white. But definitely everything is right and wrong.
Yeah, the gray just highlights like the limitedness of our current perspective.
Right.
Right. We should still strive to get you know, a more thorough, you know, perspective, so we can get more truth.
Cleaner, more accurate, precise kind of like lens that's able to.
And the grayness does help sometimes. Sometimes you really like, the best thing isn't to say it's black or white, but that it's gray, because that's the best you have to work with. And you get more accurate results in those cases, but only until you get something better.
Right.
Like for example, like probability, like that's such a good example of like just our lack of perspective. Like a lot of people say, oh, probability isn't a real phenomenon. Well, it is, in the sense that like we don't really, like, given what we know, like given these set of things we know, there's this chance that this will happen. So it's useful, like given what we know, but like we always want to know more, and we always want to develop more, you know, thorough understanding of what's going on.
Yep.
Yeah. Agreed.
Cool. So I'm gonna start working on this. It should be pretty quick.
Kind of put that in my own words there. We'll add more to it later. I feel like we're going over so many points, it's kind of hard to like crystallize that into like a certain kind of like wording.
Gotcha. But Ben, how many beats do you have written?
This is, I'm not exactly sure, but this is something like the 25th beat or something.
Okay, so maybe you could send out your first draft to Mitchell and Ben, because I think Mitchell helped out a bit when he sent his outline. You sending what you've written may actually kind of help, like Glenn or so, to kind of figure out how to start, to write them, how you can kind
Yeah, I did actually send 2 other drafts earlier on that actually have the complete outline. It's just that a lot of the beats aren't. I've basically been filling them in since then. I could send in a new one though.
Yeah, I think the latest one would probably be best because that's like what you have currently, right? But yeah, definitely appreciate any sort of thing that you have there or you've sent, as well as Mitchell. Oh, time certainly flies.
It's good. Very good session. So we're just waiting for Ben thinks to try to put something together for us at the very end. We'll call it.
All right, I've got something.
Cool.
So before coming to Pod Lair, I generally followed the mindset, as many people do, that's the way that whether the actions I took in life for me personally were right or wrong, and how I developed myself as a person, whether that was right or wrong, was up to me, and people couldn't say otherwise about that, and that I should just be happy with what comes of that. This mentality met a rude awakening when I became a member of Pod Lair, because it became apparent to me that I should always be striving to improve myself in whatever way that I can, whether that be my opinions, remolding and updating my mental models, as well as improving my heroic character and personal development. Always being open to questioning every action and heroic call that I make and am responsible for.
Wow, that's powerful. That's great.
Yeah.
Very nice. Well, all right.
Sweet.
We called there. That was a great session. Got a lot of good stuff there. And I think, Glenn, what do you think is the best method for you for working on it? Do you want to kind of like just sort of follow what Ben's doing and try and like do it that way? If you want to try maybe writing a beat, how about for next time you try to write one just so you can kind of like maybe find your style a little bit? So
I think like with me, when like I'm gonna have to just sort of set some time aside to just kind of like work on it independently to see what I kind of come up with.
Okay.
That usually is the way that works best for me when it comes to trying to figure things out. Like when I do my homework, whatever, I just kind of like set aside time to just kind of like be like, I'm going to work on this, and whatever comes, and then just going to see what I can come up with. And using references, as far as like what Ben has, is I think, or Mitchell, or both, like is helpful, because then I can be like, okay, so they're talking about this kind of a point. How does this point relate to me? Do I want to use this point, or do I think I can kind of like use something else? Kind of like just putting the hours in, putting the time in, I think is important.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so just kind of keep being active as far as like trying to see what they're doing and think, how might I do it? And then you can, as far like set that time aside to kind of like write, you may want to just percolate a lot and then kind of write maybe all once in the end or something like that. You can kind of just sort of track what Mitchell and Ben are doing, and then as they get through their beats and they're moving on to the next thing, you'll probably like, oh, I don't want to, I want to be working on that material with them too, and get the L10. That'll be like probably like a good motivation to take all the percolating you've been doing and like just kind of bang out the writing.
Yeah. I'm gonna probably do that soon. I've been really busy with math, especially, but I got the brunt of the work done. So now I feel like I have a little bit more free time. So I'm gonna try and probably tonight. I think I'll definitely try and do something. Yeah.
Cool. But whatever you do is cool, and I'll see you guys next time. We'll kind of just keep playing it, keep teasing it out like this. I think it's really been good.
Yeah. Hopefully maybe next time, I'll have something to share with you guys that then you guys can use for yourselves instead of it always just being the other way.
That's great. I think we're all sharing it and learning from each other. Okay, that should do it. Perfect on the time, and I'll see you guys on Thursday. Say hi to Mitchell if you see him. All right, have a great night.
Have a good night, guys.
Good night.